The other thing is too, I always want to make sure I'm not talking about the don't do, I want to be talking about what the do is.
Yes.
That's where I want to emphasise. I want to emphasise the positive picture that they can move towards. Because often what happens is you move towards that which you think about. So if you think about not doing drugs or you think about not drinking, then that's what you tend to move towards. Whereas I'd rather talk about having a healthy lifestyle and what it was to have a clear mind and not fuzzy. And they're the sorts of... Yes, that's right. That's right. Yeah. And that's what I said earlier on about that self-talk is really important. And it's picked up from the major caregiver, whether that's the mum or the grandparent or whoever it happens to be. What's really important is the two areas in your life you need to monitor with your adolescent, their money and their time. Whenever parents cannot account for what their adolescent is doing either with their time or their money, there are problems. I have had a number of students who've come to see me who have been expelled or suspended from school because of drug use. In every case, it was because the parents didn't know what was happening with that or with that. Year 10 student, year 11, no, year 10 student, he was hanging out with the year 11s. But he was pirating CDs and selling them in school, getting good money, doing drugs. He was going into town. Parents never knew any of this. Didn't know any of it until it was a private college, until the school picked it up. You have to monitor what they're doing with both of those things. As a last resort, call the police. That might sound a bit offensive, but teenagers must understand that the world supports your efforts to raise them, unless you are too violent or abusing to a teenager yourself, and only a foolhardy parent would be that insane. There are logical consequences for illegal behaviour. It was interesting, Adelaide's a small place, and I ran into a gentleman recently who I'd seen quite some years ago with his adolescent son, and he'd had a really rough period. Anyway, the son got to 19 and was still very, very difficult. And he would do things like take the cars, even though he'd lost his licence because of DIY. And he was really rebellious. Anyway, he took the cars and brought them back. And this father locked the cars, and the son tried to break in to the car. And this was sometime later in the night, and the father actually thought someone was breaking into the car and rang the police. But once he'd rung the police, he then realised it was his son who was breaking into the car, but didn't cancel the call. So the police came up, and the father tackled the son, pretending that he thought it was an intruder, wrestled him to the lawn, and the police showed up right then and there. And the father said this was the hardest thing he'd ever done. In fact, when he was telling me, and I met him in a city street, he started to get a little teary recalling the incident because it was the hardest thing he'd ever done. And the police were there, and they said, what do you want to do? Do you want to charge this boy? And he said, no, I don't. But they said, well, we need to take particulars, etc. But he said, you know, Daryl, he said, that was a turning point for this young man. He said it was a turning point for him in a way that had not nothing had happened beforehand that triggered him. And so he had what I would personally call a pattern interrupt, where it flipped big time. Also had a young man who was 12, got hold of father's Visa card, and father got a bank statement, and there was $2,000 that had come out, and he rang the bank and said, you made a terrible mistake. The manager said, no, we haven't made a mistake. He said, you have? You've taken money out, and he got quite annoyed with the bank manager, and finally they realised that money was coming out in $500 lots, and this young man knew the key code PIN and had taken out the money, but he had bought remote control cars, LCD screens, the whole lot, brought them home, and the parents said, where'd you get this from? And he just said, I borrowed it from my mates. So they had lost track of their time. But the point was that the father sent this young man off to a senior constable that he knew, and the senior constable came round and tried to, be the professional and give this young man a big dressing down, and it scared the life out of this young guy. I mean, and it so happened that this father knew this constable, but he called in the police. I mean, even though it was a friend, he called him in for the big lecture, and it worked. And this young man was really quite ready then to take a different path in life.